Georgia has an opponent in this SEC championship game, and they played them before.
Yeah.
Are they going to have the same result this time when we play Texas in Atlanta for all the marbles? Next on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. He is Daniel. I'm Clint. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. More on them in a second. Thank you for the everydayers that are here, the people that tune in every single day. You make us do this podcast and have so much fun. For the first listeners, that when you wake up, you get this podcast locked and loaded and ready to listen about the Georgia Bulldogs. You guys are our favorite. Loyal third segment listeners that listen all the way to the end. We appreciate you all as well. Today, we are talking about that SEC championship game that two idiots said long ago that we had no chance to get into. Turns out we had all the chance to get into.
Well,
Well,
we still were idiots.
I didn't correct that part.
Yeah, okay.
No. I didn't change that part, Daniel. That part is still true.
Okay.
We're going to be talking today about look ahead to Texas. We've seen them before. What changes? What hope do we have, if any, in the SEC championship game? How do we attack the Longhorns? Secondly, playoff chances of the SEC, and what does it mean for us looking ahead? And then lastly, landscape of this game, maybe some first kind of keys of the game, not only who Texas are and who the rest of the playoff is, but some keys of the game. Let's start with who Texas is. We have seen them before, Daniel. We've seen them to the 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 turnovers in Austin. Defense was on a heater. Michael Williams, as well as Jalen Walker, showed themselves to be the first-round talent we know them to be, as well as the rest of the defense. Linebacker C.J. Allen was playing with his hair on fire that day. K.J. Bolden, Dan Jackson, and the like as well, Daniel. Interesting matchup because Texas, I don't think has changed at all this year, Daniel. I could be wrong, but as I watch Texas throughout the year progress, we've seen Carson Beck have his ups and downs. We've seen Carson Beck been called to bench, and all of a sudden he is playing like a Heisman finalist. He's not going to New York, by the way, but he's playing like the last 3 games. There was comments from somebody saying he should get an invite. No, he shouldn't. He has 20 bazillion interceptions. But the last 3, he has played absolutely terrific football. Sure. Texas, conversely, is kind of who they've always been this season, Daniel. They've just kind of plodded along, and you can do that when you have a strength of schedule like they do and you haven't played nobody yet. They plodded along. So in large part, we're going to be facing the same team we did in Austin, Daniel. Am I wrong? Let's start there. Am I wrong for saying that?
Let me ask you this. How many teams in the current AP top 25 has Texas played this year?
Let me cycle through if I could really quick. Can you?
Okay,
hit the
Rolodex.
Yeah,
there's us, but then how many others? They lost that game to us, if my memory says.
Yeah, they did lose that game. But if I'm going to tabulate. Oh wait, there's none.
No, there's none of them, and so that's fun. I mean, which Texas, huge win over your rival on the road. Kyle Field, not an easy place to play, and obviously a big win. And they dominated. The Texas defense absolutely dominated. Gave up 0 points in that game. The Texas defense absolutely played lights out. Texas is who they are. They've got talent at the skill positions. They've got a brilliant offensive mind. They've got a really talented and tremendously dominant in every game but one this season offensive line. And this Wisner kid, he's just gotten better and better and better and better and better, Clint.
There it is. That's the one piece. If we're looking back, Texas lost 2 running backs to start the season. We thought they were depleted, but Wisner has progressed. That's the one aspect of this team that has gotten better each and every week. You're right.
Yeah, and the defense kind of is who they are. They haven't blinked. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out. I will say this. I do not think that Texas is going to have the benefit of toilet Carson Beck like they had in game 1. Carson Beck, Georgia won that game 30-15, doubled them up in Austin. Night game in Austin. A lot of people were there, Clint. I'm not sure if you know this. A lot of people were there to take pictures and to do the whole celebrity thing. Georgia, on the other hand, was not there for any of that.
No, it was business.
They were there to eat. They were just there to eat. And that's exactly what they did. And they did so in spite of Carson Beck playing an absolutely mind-numbingly bad game. Like,
awful.
A terrible performance by Carson Beck. Yeah. And we said probably Mike Bobo's worst game as a play caller at the University of Georgia. Like, I mean, until this last week.
There it is.
But I mean, the amount of empty sets that we were in, the amount of 5 wide, do you remember in that game? Like, it was like Mike Bobo was daring Carson Beck to not be awful, and Carson Beck would not oblige. He was awful from start to finish. I don't.
Yeah, it was like a classic Mexican standoff in a movie of a toddler and a mom who are fighting to see which one's going to break first in the restaurant. That was Mike Bobo and Carson Beck.
Carson Beck, yeah. I will say this: Georgia wins in convincing fashion. In spite of that performance, I don't think anybody thinks Carson Beck's going to play that bad in Mercedes-Benz on Saturday. I would be utterly shocked if Carson Beck plays that bad on Saturday in Mercedes-Benz. I would be shocked if the game plan is not solid from this offensive staff. And I would be shocked if we don't see a much better version of Carson Beck. And so,
agreed.
You think about that.
Yeah.
And you think like, well, Georgia won handily the first time. Carson Beck played like absolute dumpster fire. He's not going to play that bad this time. Texas is not going to have the advantage of that. I would also be shocked, Clint, if Texas turns the ball over 4 times. I would be shocked if Georgia gets 7 sacks in this game.
10 TFL, 7 sacks, 4 turnovers is not going to happen.
Dumbfounded if that happened. It ain't happening again. And so you kind of have these 2 teams that played each other, but you almost go into this game like, did they play each other? Because what I saw, if I'm being totally honest, didn't really resemble the Georgia offense, because Carson Beck's not nearly that bad.
No.
And it didn't really resemble the Georgia defense, Georgia fans, because where they been? If that's the Georgia defense, I beg you to show me them since, because we haven't seen them.
The only thing you can point to is the Tennessee game. Is the only time you can point to.
Right.
But that's at home.
But Josh Heupel can't score on anybody.
Josh just going to
put up any points on anybody.
Steve Sarkisian is not Josh Heupel. I will tell you that much right now. I don't know a lot of this college football season. That much I do know definitively. Yeah. We're going to come back after this. We're going to talk about what this SEC championship game means in Georgia's playoffs push, and then give you a couple of keys to the game at the end of this. But first, these. These are, in fact, FanDuel. FanDuel.com, the only place where Daniel and I make all these bets. And right now, these lines are out for conference championship. I'll tell you right now, they are tasty all over the place. 2.5, 3.5 points.
Blocks are going to be fire.
They're going to be fire. Y'all, 2.5, 3.5 point on a couple of these. One is up there near 10, but man, y'all, wherever we make these, it's over at FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On podcasts, everywhere. The only place Daniel and I trust. And right now, you make a $5 bet, you win that $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets straight to your account. That's right. FanDuel take care of you. $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets. Win that cash. Is FanDuel.com. Make every moment more.
All right, Clint. Well, there you are. Here I am. Let's talk about this game. Because one team is going to win it and one team's going to lose it. I'm not sure if you're aware of how college football works, but that is how it goes. And so, Georgia has a chance to take its 3rd loss on the year on Saturday. Let's talk about the swings. Let's talk about how high we could see Georgia get as a result of this game with a win. And let's talk about how low we could see Georgia fall after this game with a loss. So let's start with a win. If Georgia wins this game, I think you have Georgia as a lock for the 2 seed. Georgia wins this game, I think they're a lock for the 2 seed. I cannot imagine a scenario where any other conference champion other than Oregon would pass Georgia. I suppose either Oregon or and so that would be my question to you, Clint, is if Penn State beats Oregon, could you see Georgia as the 1 seed coming out of this game? Or would Penn State, with only 1 loss on the year and then a win over Oregon, undefeated Oregon, would Penn State jump and get the 1 seed? Do you think Georgia has a shot at the 1 seed in the college football playoff? Clint is just leaving me in the middle of the show. I do not. I think Penn State would take that 1 seed. If they beat Oregon, I think Penn State would jump Georgia. Georgia fans will hate that. They would not like that at all. But I think you're going to see Penn State potentially jump Georgia if they win that game. Obviously, if Oregon wins, they'll be the 1 seed. So I think if Georgia wins this game, they're the 2 seed. It's locked in. It's absolutely locked in. So now you go to the other side of the equation. I think if Georgia loses this game, I think the worst case scenario, Clint, is that I think you would have Georgia hosting a home playoff game as the 7, maybe the 8 seed in this playoff. You would much rather be the 7 seed than the 8 seed, in my opinion. I think the question would be, does Tennessee pass Georgia? I think you're going to have the loser of the Big Ten championship game and Notre Dame will be ranked ahead of Georgia, whether Georgia fans like it or not. Those 2 teams will be 5 and 6. The question will be, will Georgia be 7 or will Tennessee jump Georgia because of the loss, which I don't think they should. I think Georgia should be 7 in that scenario. Do you think there's a chance Georgia falls all the way to 8? Hosting either way, but do you think there's a chance we fall all the way to 8, Clint?
I don't think we go past 7. I think how it's set up, and I think how they've structured it already. They've given the indications. I think the coaches poll has been closely associated with this so far, and I think you're going to see the same exact thing. Georgia moved up in the coaches poll to number 5. I think they're going to continue that. I think they may actually be that exact same situation for the playoff rankings. SEC championship, even if it's 1 or 2 spots down from that 5, I think 7 is the floor of where we're going to go. So that sets us up in a bracket that actually is pretty favorable for Georgia to host a playoff game at 7 and get some good matchups going forward. Of course, depending on who wins the conference championship game. But no, I don't see a situation in which we are 8 and below. Hosting a game or getting a bye is almost a lock. Again, who the heck knows with this committee? Because no one does. Again,
no one does
yet to tell us what the criteria is. And until they do, we're guessing. We're throwing darts in a dark room. But from what I've seen, observed thus far, and what I know about the coaches poll and what I know about the conference championship games, and who is the top 12, 7 is our basement. I would agree with that.
Which puts you against the 10 seed, which in this hypothetical scenario, the 9-10 probably looks like if SMU loses the conference championship game, SMU could be down there in one of those spots. You could be looking at an Indiana down there in one of those spots.
Sure.
I think that's pretty solidly where you're going to find an Indiana team in that 9, maybe 10 range.
I would say 10, yeah.
You could have, if you have a lot of chaos, you could potentially have Alabama sneaking up as high as 10.
Yep.
Maybe a Miami, if they're going to sneak their way into that playoff. There's a lot of different teams that you could be looking at if you're Georgia. But if you're in that 7 spot, you would match up against the 2 seed in the second round, which would be Texas. in this scenario, and so you would get to play them for a third time this season. It wouldn't be particularly fun if you're that 6 spot.
Yeah,
you kind of flirt with this line. If you get that 6 spot, Clint, you could have to play a team like Alabama in round 1.
Yep.
Nobody wants that, especially not if you're Georgia. You don't want to play Alabama.
No.
Alabama sucks, to be clear. They're
not
really
a good
suck.
team. They shouldn't be a playoff contending team. There are other teams who are better than them.
Yeah.
Alabama has the DNA to beat one team, and that team is Georgia for reasons that are beyond explanation.
It has to do with a voodoo curse. We don't know.
Correct.
We don't get into it. You run the risk of having to play a team like that in round 1, but in round 2,
here we go.
You would find your way into that matchup against the 3 seed, which would be significantly more advantageous than the 2 seed. And so it is interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the bracket breaks down for Georgia. But I think, we got on here 2 weeks ago and said Georgia has 0 chance of hosting a playoff game and probably won't make the playoff.
That's what we said.
Probably will miss the playoff entirely and has no shot of hosting a playoff game.
And then what happened?
Okay. So, update. Georgia's either going to get a first round bye or they're going to host a playoff game. We'll come back probably on tomorrow's show and talk about why I think the first round bye is so important for this team. I actually think it's the most important thing Georgia could do all season would be to win on Saturday. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think you could find yourself anywhere between 2 and 8. But I don't think you're going to fall outside of that top 8, Clint. So
no, a home playoff game in Athens is in fact the basement for it, which is really interesting because that has implications all the way down the rest of the bracket. Because at SMU, barring a conference championship winner, like people are already clamoring because they haven't played nobody. The ACC is bad, like all that stuff. They're going to be in, guys. They're one of the top wins and losses, and that's what the biggest thing is. So Miami,
even if they lose to Clemson,
yes,
you think they're going to be in?
I think they lose. They lose to Clemson, they're in. Like if
that's where I think you could find them down in that 9-10 seed. Yeah,
I think 9-10 seed. Yes, exactly. However, conversely, in all of this, Miami has a real shot. I don't think the committee is going to do this because I think they like Cam Ward being in the playoff. You make a really compelling argument for Miami to be left out of this playoff, like 100%.
What's the argument? They haven't beaten a single good team, and they lost 2 games in the last 3 weeks.
That's the argument. And Mario Cristobal doesn't know what to do with good things.
Or defense.
Or defense. Sorry. Yes. Good things. I said good things.
It is. We're going to have a lot to talk about when the bracket comes out. I think that's where you're going to find Georgia somewhere in there, but I do think this game matters a lot. We're going to be back talking about some keys to the game, some very early thoughts. Georgia will win if this happens. Texas will win if this happens. All that and more right after these.
These are, in fact, Game Time. GameTime.co. Download the Game Time app right now in the iOS store as well as Google Play. Get over there right now. The app is going to go ahead and get you view from the seats, so you can go ahead and get your tickets to concerts, football games, basketball games, whenever you need them, and the cheapest price that you can find on the internet. How do we know that every single time we go to a concert or to a game, we use Game Time app? And right now, they're going to use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's $20 off your first purchase with Locked On College. You hit that slider at the top, moves everything to where you get to see the all-in price right there in front of you without having to go to checkout and having 15 minutes before you get timed out because you're searching every other site. Don't do that. We've done that for you. Yeah. Guess what? GameTime.co is the cheapest. Download the GameTime app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
All right, Clint, some keys to the game. As you think about this game, your early leans, your early thoughts. You watch the game on Saturday night. Yep. Texas A&M. What are your thoughts on this game? Give me a couple keys on the Georgia side of things. What does Georgia need to do in order to have a shot in this game.
The offense just keep humming along. I will say this. Mike Bobo called the worst game of his season so far against Georgia Tech.
0 points in the first half, to be clear.
To be clear, first time that's happened in eons for Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay,
maybe start humming along a little sooner is all I'm saying. Maybe
when the whistle to kick off the game begin
humming immediately.
You can score. They've
allowed
the rules stipulate that you can score at that point.
Okay, so offense the whole game. That'd be nice.
The whole game, we fine. Okay. I think actually I saw good amount of bursts from Roderick last game, Daniel. It was limited capacity. There was a couple of runs where he got negative yards. He wasn't getting north and south, but when he got north and south, I liked what I saw of him. Nate Frazier, I really like what I saw of him.
Yeah,
he's just fine.
I'm back on the Nate Frazier train.
Yeah. Thank you. Nate Frazier, Roderick, and Cass Jones. Those three, y'all, we fine. Like, I know Etienne's there, and I know, by the way, Etienne's not playing in this game. Just when Kirby Smart tells you, I don't know about him, I haven't seen him, he ain't playing. Like, okay, it's just
he ain't going to tell you he's playing. He ain't going to tell you he's playing at all.
No. But I don't think he's going to. I think the running back room is fine. I think Eurosic coming on last game, we saw him catch a bunch. I think Delp and Lawson Lucky doing fine. And I think as guys continue to get healthy, Monroe Freeling in the run game for offensively, you saw him pass pro. You saw him in the run game, block downfield and take some guys just to the shed. We're fine there. Nothing of the Texas defense and their efficiency scares me on that regard. What conversely on the other side, the defensive side of the ball, when they get in pass pro, this is what Texas, I think the mistake they did because they didn't watch film. This is where Sark, I think, needs to learn from Lane. Georgia defense has a problem when you get at the soft underbelly and you run straight at them. When you get in your pass pro sets and you let them bend the edge and use speed and athleticism, that's where Michael and Jalen and the rest of them do well. When you lean on them and push them, that's where we start to crumble. Texas didn't do that in game one. Texas, I thought I saw a little bit more of that in the A&M game. But if C. Sarkisian wants to go ahead and get a hobbled quarterback who's not as mobile as their backup, Quinn Ewers, with the offensive tackles popping up and pass pro quick, that's going to make our defense look good. So, Sark, if you leaned on him and relied on Wisner, it would be bad for us. I saw them do that in A&M against A&M, but man, Daniel, for some reason, he just continues to go back to the pass game and setting them up. And when they get down the red zone, they bring in Arch, which is good on you, I suppose, when you get down there. If you did that all the time against Georgia, I have heart palpitations. I am losing my mind. Arch comes into the game and he's at the midfield doing it. It's going to be a long, long night.
I honestly think we're going to get into this more. Texas scored 17 points against Texas A&M, y'all. Like, it ain't like they got out there and lit the world on fire.
No.
Like, they could have, as good as their defense played, they were 1 yard away from receiving the ball up 3 points with 5 minutes to go in the game.
Yep.
Like, and Texas A&M with all three of their timeouts. Like, it's not like they went in there and blew them out.
No.
Quinn Ewers threw the ball 28 times. Wisner alone rushed 33 times in the game. Clint, to your point, they absolutely leaned on him and they were perfectly content to shorten the game and to stretch it out. I don't think they're going to do that against Kirby. And to be honest with you, I don't think they can. I don't think they can afford to do that against this Georgia offense because I think I think they know dang well Carson Beck's going to score more than 21 points in this game. The Georgia offense is going to score more than 21 points in this game. Now, they might score them all in the fourth quarter. They might not get nary a one of them before the fourth quarter. And I might die. But they're going to score 21 points in this game.
Yeah.
And so I think Sark knows that he's going to have to be more aggressive. And so I still think that the Georgia game plan defensively is going to be, let's keep everything in front of us.
Yeah.
Let's let them plod and march down the field, even though that's exactly what they just did to Texas A&M. That's exactly what Georgia Tech just did to us with a tremendous amount of success. Like, you would think that the game plan for this Georgia defense would need to be, screw it. Put everybody on an island, and we got to freaking stop the run. We have to stop the run. Everyone and their grandma is running the ball against this Georgia team. We've got to stop it. I don't think that's going to be the game plan.
No.
Because I think Sark will blink first.
Yep.
I think Kirby knows that Sark will blink first, and he will get away from it. What you saw in that game against Texas A&M was you saw run, shot play down the field.
Yep.
Like, you had a lot of 25, 30, 40-yard receptions by Texas in that game. Run, shot play down the field. At his core, Steve Sarkisian still wants to be explosive. He still wants to score quick. He still wants to move the ball down the field in chunks. And so I think you're still going to see Kirby play with the safeties back, try to keep everything in front of him. Now, will that work? I don't know. Texas may just run it right down our throats, and they may win 17-7 in this game because Georgia may get 3 possessions, and Georgia's not going to score on their first 7 possessions in the game. We know that from history.
We have historical evidence.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I agree with you.
If Steve Sarkisian comes out just airing the ball all over the field, I'm thrilled. Like, in all honesty, I am thrilled because our pass rush will get home and our DBs will be on an island because Kirby trusts him and able to do so. And I'm going to be thrilled because that means the clock is stopped. Steve Sarkisian putting himself behind the chains, and that's where our defense does all right. It's the one area where I'm okay with that. Give the ball back to Carson Beck. Let him go down.
Our DBs being on an island. You mean Julian Humphrey? Is that who you mean?
I talk
which
about
island?
Players,
which island?
I talk about players that are here, Daniel.
Oh, okay.
I'm like Kirby.
Georgia.
I talk
Georgia
about
players.
players.
You're talking about Georgia players.
Correct.
Oh,
I care about.
Well,
Georgia
that's different
players.
then.
That is different. 100%. It's
not people who don't belong.
No.
I mean, you remember that time 6 plays into the Tennessee game when he got ripped out of the game? And he ain't been back in.
Go do what you think is best for you. I have no problem with you doing so.
It ain't going to be playing here.
Because you weren't going to be. I watched Daniel Harris get crossing routed to death by Georgia Tech receivers. It was abysmal.
We had Daniel Harris passing off people to CJ Allen on a levels concept.
Yeah, we did.
And I died inside. That is when I ceased to exist.
That touchdown in which both of them were 7 yards behind him as he just coasted. And I thought,
not even remotely in the frame.
This can't be our game plan. Oh, it was. Hey, we're going to be back tomorrow talking about all manner of Georgia as we look ahead to this SEC championship with college playoff rankings. He is Daniel. I am Clint. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you all tomorrow.
See ya.